hi everyone, I'm Libby from ProWritingAid and welcome to today's Write-In all about writing Act 1 of your novel. Okay, I'm gonna do some screen magic here and switch between my screens. There we go. So, what is Act 1 anyway? Act 1 makes up 25% of your story. In a 3-act structure, Act 1 is the first act of your story. This act typically makes up about 25% of your novel. So even though you've got those 3 acts, Act 1 still takes up a quarter of your story, getting everything set up. Act 1 usually starts with exposition that establishes your world and characters. The reader will learn what life is like for your main character before the action of your novel begins. So you're going to set up everything that your reader needs to know to understand the stakes when the action really kicks off for your main character. So the end of Act 1. So before we sort of work out what's going into Act 1, I'm going to skip to the end quickly so you can really understand the chunk of the story that we're working with here. So Act 1 usually ends near the inciting incident. This is the event that pulls your protagonist out of their normal world and into the main action of the story. This event will catapult your story into Act 2. It will really get that action going. So what do you include in Act 1? You're going to introduce your protagonist and their ordinary life. You'll introduce your setting. If your story contains fantasy, supernatural, or science fiction elements, you should introduce them and give backstory here if you can, just so the reader really feels ready to navigate your world, because there'll probably be some more unfamiliar elements here. But that kind of applies to any genre. Really, you want to help your reader get to know your character in the way that is best going to help them navigate your story, the world that you're creating, the stakes, the plot, everything. An inciting incident is included in Act 1 that will propel your protagonist into action, and you're also going to set up the next act of your story as well in Act 1. So I always like an example to help me understand things, so let's walk through the first act of The Wizard of Oz. So we see Dorothy and her family on the farm, and we meet Toto, very important character. We see Dorothy feel sad and misunderstood, and that is how we are introduced to our protagonist and her ordinary life. We meet Dorothy in Kansas and we learn about her life there. We see the things she does every day, how she does them, what her life is like, and how she interacts with that setting before the story changes her. And that's how we're introduced to our setting through her eyes. Dorothy runs away from home, and the reader's able to understand that because of how we're introduced to her and how she interacts with her setting. She then encounters a twister and is sent to Oz, as we all know, and that is the incident that propels our protagonist into action. And then setting up the next act, Dorothy meets the good witch who tells her that she needs to follow the yellow brick road to meet the wizard, and that is how we are propelled into Act 2 of The Wizard of Oz. So that is the teaching content that I've got for you today, and we're going to move on to some exercises now so you can actually get writing. So our first exercise is, so you're going to describe who your protagonist is before the events of your story. Who are they? What do they do? Who do they hang out with? This is kind of anything that you think is helpful for your reader to get a sense of who your character is before your story changes them in some way. So with that in mind, you're also sort of setting up, sowing the seeds. You're obviously sowing the seeds for later on, so that you can really show some change in your character as your story progresses. So if anybody has got any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and I will answer those for you. But I'm going to disappear and let you write for 5 minutes. And when we come back, we can share some of our writing in the chat if you like. Obviously, again, you don't have to do that. So yeah, let's get writing. I'm going to start our timer and off you go. That's a minute left. Great, there we go. So if you would like, it would be great if you would share the little bit that you got written there in the chat so that we could all sort of see where you got up to. But if you're not comfortable with that, completely fine. Maybe you'd just like to share how you found that exercise, what was maybe a little bit difficult about it. I think sometimes we have big ideas about where our story is going, and then actually you get back to the beginning and you think, oh God, like how do I actually set all of that up? How do I make it so that my reader, you know, wants to read this book enough that they get to this really exciting bit that I've come up with? Cool, we've got some writing. So Lauren has written in. So I'm going to read this out, and so we can sort of, yeah, see what everyone's writing. I love this bit. So Lauren has written, Jared was usually the one called upon in such emergencies. What was for many a singular event in their lives is almost a daily occurrence in his. He arrived and quickly went through the procedures needed for the sacrifice, calmly and determinedly doing one activity after another as if routine. If you watched, you would want him to hurry. Oops, sorry. But then he would be on to the next step. You'd be amazed how he knows what to do every minute. Interesting. I love the line, what was for many a singular event in their lives is almost a daily occurrence in his. That really, I love that kind of thing. I love sort of thinking about what life is like for people that deal with these really big, I mean, even in sort of our real world, this sounds like a slightly different world, but you know, people who work in our healthcare services and things like that, how, yeah, the feelings that come up, and just getting into the mind of somebody whose life is probably quite different to yours. That sounds like a really great sort of opening set of circumstances. Cool, thank you so much for sharing. Ed has shared, Genova is an ordinary girl from a small province in the Philippines. She's usually reserved and kept to herself. All her life she felt like an outsider. She doesn't have any friends. She lives with her grandmother, who has raised her since she was a baby. Her mother died when she was 6 months old, and her father has been non-existent since conception, at least according to her grandmother. She is a loner. No one comes to visit her or her grandmother, Lola Nora, at home. In school, she finds the most remote corner when not in class. She is always bullied, always ostracized, always called a horrible bruja. That is witch in Tagalog. She has never understood why they always called her that. All her life she has been told that brujas are evil and do nothing but harm. She has never done anything remotely close to any kind of magic. So that makes me think she is going to do something to do with magic, which is a great way to set that up. And it also gives me the sense that there's a lot there that, you know, she's going to want to leave her old life. There is a lot there for her to want to escape, and maybe your inciting incident will be a chance for her to escape that. And the stakes there are that, you know, we've seen why she wants to escape. We've seen what she wants to get away from, and that'll be quite an exciting moment when potentially that opportunity arises. Thank you so much for sharing. Oh yeah, I've seen somebody said they realized they started their story too late, so just sketched out their character's backstory. You can be writing and be like, hang on, they need to know this. And that's not a bad thing. That's all part of the process. I think I'll read one more before or a couple more actually, I think we've got time. So Steph has written, Milo is a regular dragon going on adventures with his dragon elf friend who has borne the responsibility of raising Milo. During one of their adventures, Milo is struck by a curse. This curse doesn't allow Milo to grow into a full-fledged dragon. He is permanently stuck at a small dragon size 6'4". I wish I was a small dragon. 5'4". Milo continues to age and eventually decides he must venture out on his own. Unfortunately, he isn't very accepted by his kind because he isn't the appropriate size and he is wanting to undo his curse. After a couple of incidents of helping others, he is determined to open a detective agency, allowing him to earn a living while continuing to search for an answer to his predicament. Oh my god, a detective dragon. I love that. Yeah, something that is kind of, you've taken something that's normally kind of quite like one kind of story where you've got something in, like, you know, in yourself that you can't change necessarily, that you have to learn to accept, to something where there is the possibility of him potentially, well, at the start he feels like he needs to overcome it. I wonder whether he'll move through the story and think, actually it's okay that I'm a smaller dragon, because actually I've built this life for myself, I've built this meaning and this worth for myself. So yeah, I love that. I love how many different types of story people are writing as well. This is why I love these sessions. Brilliant. Dragon detective, cool. Yeah. Oh, great. I'm glad that you found it was an interesting exercise. It's cool to think about. Yeah, the before. We get so wrapped up in the events of our story that we get to just think through, actually, how are we going to change them and what do they need to be for us to show that change in the most meaningful way. Yeah, it's great. Cool. I think we are going to move on to our next exercise. So I mentioned setting up your protagonist. Now we are going to not start our video again. We are going to go to the next exercise. There we go. So I mentioned setting up your protagonist. We also want to set up our setting. So quite similarly, you are going to describe the setting before the events of your story. What should the reader know about the setting before those events begin? What is going to help that reader, as I said before, navigate your world and understand why your characters interact with the setting in the way that they do, whether it's sort of hostile to them and that means that they need to get out of there, or whether there's kind of, I don't know, even sort of different plants and things that you might use later in some sort of like remedy or something that you establish as being either abundant or very rare, for example. So yeah, I know that you all know your stories really well, so let's jump in and describe our settings. So you've got 5 minutes and your time starts now. Just under a minute left. Okay, cool. These seem to go so fast, don't they? So if you're happy to share, pop those in the chat. Brilliant. I can see some of you already doing that. Or as I said before, just share how you found the exercise. I found it funny because somebody said almost as mind-bending as writing a query as the as to the other exercise. So I like that review. Totally sucked at this one. I'm sure you didn't. I'm sure you did okay. I think it's so easy to feel like you can't do something, but actually I think any time you spend thinking about these ideas, it's always going to be useful. So I'm sure your writing was great. Cool. So I'm going to read through some of these. The shadows of rocky passages gave way to an evening sun so bright as it set over the mountains she could barely stand to look at the sky. Its rays seeped over the lush peninsulas and spread out onto a lake that sat just below the slope, turning the surface into a glistening array of light. It was as though the sunbeams were guiding her attention to a row of residences nestled along the shoreline. The architecture was such that they blended into their surroundings, hidden in plain sight. Large wooden decks rose from the water, leading to the orb-shaped structures. Behind the lakeside dwellings stood towering skyscrapers covered in vegetation, their shapes geometric with hexagonal planes of glass. Sky-high bridges connected to the striking towers. She wasn't in Santa Barbara anymore. I love that. It's almost like a little connection to the Wizard of Oz there. We're not in Kansas anymore. I love those descriptions. I love the sort of glitteriness of it and how the lake is kind of glistening in a way that you'd almost expect. I mean, you would expect water to, but you kind of expect skyscrapers to as well. But actually the skyscrapers have almost been like taken over by nature as well. And the structures are orb shaped, and it's kind of subtle, but actually how many structures do we have that are kind of orb shaped? So you can tell it's different. It's not Santa Barbara anymore. I love that. It's great. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Lou's writing here. Setting is the home of the characters, Jay and Mo. They have just unloaded their latest haul of stolen Amazon packages. Their home is a townhouse, normal in all respects. Home is usually a safe place, but not anymore. One of the packages is a trap. Sorry, I've just lost the message. There we go. A trap that allows the owner of the package to pinpoint the location of the package. Jay and Mo don't know how they've made themselves a target, and their home is no longer a safe place. That's great, sort of navigating that I should be able to trust this, and now I can't trust it anymore, and so I need to find new things to trust, and I need to learn how to navigate my life now that this has happened. That's really interesting. I really enjoyed your description as well of your protagonist earlier, and I can kind of see how those relationships are gonna really be tested by the status quo being disrupted like that. So yeah, interesting. Thank you. Cool. Steph's piece here. Ulkin is a planet that is home to dragons, elves, gnomes, humans, dwarfs, and Elat. The Elat are any half species, being such as an elf and a wildcat, a dwarf and a horse, etc. It isn't known how these Elat came to be. Science experiments? Did they always exist? Are they weird spells that have gone wrong? They are mages, and they study different areas of magic. This magic system is based on different types of energy, force, nature, etc. There are a few big cities, but mostly towns and villages. There are cobblestone streets, wood and stone houses, and basically a medieval feel to the world. There are ocean cities created by the splash mages and water-related Elats. Milo lives in the bustling city of Mistshire, nestled between the foothills and the sea. I really like that you've brought in the different kind of species, the different people have created the different places, and it would be really cool to see. I love it when you're reading and there's just little details scattered in there that you can relate to what you know about the characters. I think it's a really great way to keep your setting like as almost like a character in the story, when people say that, by showing how it was molded by the people that you're showing to interact with the setting. And it's always great to just see what people will do with magic and how they will make their lives easier with magic, and how that kind of goes into the setting. Sorry, I'm reading people's reactions to Lou's stories. Porch pirates. I love that. I really like the package trap. That's really great. And I really love the creativity that's going on here. It's great. Okay, Lauren's entry here. Entry like it's a competition. It's not a competition. Sorry. The priest looked up at the sacrificial tower, which as usual was at the top of a hill. Ah, cool. So there's more of them. It was the same pattern and style as it was in all the other worlds. In a forest near a lake with flowers and mountains in the background. The same on every world. Beautiful, boring. Oh, I love it when beauty is described as boring. I love it when people explore the I guess beauty, ironically, of difference, and that actually the things that are seen as beautiful become commonplace, and how do we re-rank all of the things in this world if beauty is kind of in your protagonist's mind boring. Like, yeah. Steph like fixed my blunder for me there. A competition we all win because we are writing. There you go. And are there any others? Yeah, Ed. I hope it's Ed and not Eddie. I'm sorry if I'm getting your name wrong. I'm just using your email address to get that. It is Genova's 17th birthday. Every year she has one wish: to finally meet her father. Every year, same wish, same disappointment. However, this year, tap, 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 tap. No, it isn't her father. It's an elderly man. Stranger, but only to her. However, not to her Lola. She hears a not so pleasant exchange between them at the door. Mostly not so pleasant from her Lola. The stranger is quite polite and patient with her, as if he has known Laura for a very long time. Yeah, so when somebody doesn't know the people in even sort of in their world, and you're bringing these people in, they kind of become like a landscape as well, like a setting of people. Yeah, really cool. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing these. Yeah, I love seeing the creativity. Eddie, got it. Thank you. I love seeing the creativity as well. It's so, I just love that we're all going around with all these ideas just in our head, and like whenever you see people out on the street, they could have like a whole world going on. I mean, everybody has a whole world, but you know, a whole story going on in their head. I love it. Right, I'll stop rambling. Let's go for the next exercise. No, we're not starting our video again. There we go. Right. Right, so next you're going to describe what will remove your protagonist from their ordinary world that you have already set up there. You can either write bullet points of the events, or you can write a full scene, or you can write both, whatever sort of helps you plan that out. So yeah, what is going to happen that makes them sort of have to leave that world? What is the event? So 10 minutes starting now. Any questions or anything, let me know, either in the chat or in the Q&A box. Just under a minute left. Cool, there we go. 10 minutes goes fast. It almost feels as fast as 5 minutes. Cool, we've had some great comments here. So Michelle has written the theft of her protagonist's horse, the investigation into the death of her protagonist's parents, finding out about the equity loan documents that are suspicious, wanting to know why abused horses are being transported into a pole barn at the far end of another ranch. Okay, so like a few different things going on that mean that your protagonist is just not going to be able to leave these threads alone. She's going to have to pick them up and try and unravel them and work out what's going on. And sort of like things that have already happened as well that she has to deal with, and then also that wanting to know why this is happening to her as well. That's really interesting. Thank you. Lauren, Jereb is a priest who is bored with his job. He follows all the protocols to a T. He is well respected, and he knows all the laws of the planet makers. I love that I always forget that they're supernatural story or like fantasy stories or whatever. And I'm like, oh, right. He is zealous, but something is missing. He wants more from his sacrifices. He wants to know the planet makers, but is forbidden for anyone to communicate with them or even try to do so. But there is someone who is reportedly communicating with them. He is tasked with killing this person. He is professionally incensed, but personally intrigued. Sorry, I read that wrong. He's professionally incensed, but personally intrigued. He doesn't want to kill, so he resists the order from the council at first. So he's been instructed to do this thing that is going to not only shake his world, but actually the world that he lives in as well, which is a great way to get your reader hooked and to wonder what is going to happen and what the consequences are going to be, not only for your character, but for the setting that you've set up as well. Thank you. Brilliant. Okay, so Lou, one of Mo's stolen boxes contains something evil. Jay has the touch and he senses it. They open the box and inside is a small sample bag with a pinch of dirt. This is where the evil is emanating from. He knows through the touch an alarm has been tripped. What he doesn't know is that the pinch of dirt is from a vampire's coffin. Amable, who treats the theft as an open invite to come into Jay's home. Sorry, I'm doing a terrible job of reading today. Right, what he doesn't know is that the pinch of dirt is from a vampire's coffin. Amable, who treats the theft as an open invite to come into Jay's home. Okay, so we've got vampires now. That is interesting. That's sort of gone in a different direction to where I was expecting. Oh, really cool. It's a way to actually take something that kind of, because I know you said it was inspired by those videos of people like stealing people's Amazon packages, but it's a way of taking something that we might recognize from our world and then bringing in that sort of supernatural paranormal element into your story in a way that feels really grounded, so that we are just as kind of surprised by it as your protagonist is likely to be. So yeah, it's a really cool way of doing that. Let's keep reading some of these. Kareen, a 12-year-old Mongolian herder boy, gets educated at a monastery school far from his parents' encampment. He's training for the yearly Nadam festival, in which participants hone the 3 manly skills of wrestling, archery, and horseback riding. He gets picked up on horseback by his grandfather before the end of the school year because his father is very ill and they need the boy at home. On the 2-day ride through the desert, they stop at a cousin's yurt and help vaccinate the horses, even though the protagonist is very impatient to get home. Interesting. So, I mean, the initial setup really interests me, like what it is for a person to go through something that is kind of traditional, and how that tradition is then interpreted differently by whoever has to go through it, but then also the new sort of like personal conflict of having to get home for his father. But then why have they stopped to sort of help vaccinate the horses, and what's going to happen there? Like why have they stopped there, and what is going to happen there? That's what is intriguing me now too. I think I'll read through one more because we've got another 10-minute prompt after this one, so I want to read your answers to that one too. So Teresa has written, Katrina must learn to use her powers, innate ability she didn't even know she had, in order to save Shanti, a secret world that lies within and is connected to Earth. Oh, cool. Okay. Home to her father and his twin brother, Nialgus, who has mysteriously turned up in need of Katrina's help. But can Nialgus teach Katrina all she needs to know in time? Can Katrina learn to tap into her elemental abilities that draw on an universal life energy surrounding everything? Or will the untimely death of her father and the guilt she carries about it keep her from reaching her full potential? Oh, yeah, I love it when you sorry, I keep saying I love everything, but I do. I really, really enjoy it when you actually are told what, or you're shown rather, what a person could be. And to start with, the anxiety is, will they become that? But then quite often the real story is in who they become instead. And I really love the unexpectedness of that. Oh gosh, we've got more. I'm going to read these while we thank you so much all for sharing. I can see more and more people are sharing. I'm going to read through these as we work on the next prompt, and I will probably read a couple more after the prompt is gone, but I'm going to get you guys started on this one. So finally, describe what events will propel your protagonist into Act 2. What will force them to continue down this new path rather than stay in the safety of their home. So I can see how this could be a little bit similar to the last prompt, but I think a good way to approach it, and if you're already all good, feel free to mute me and get writing, but a good way to approach it is to think, okay, so this event has happened that is, you know, worrying for them, exciting for them, but you know, an event could happen and you could just bury your head in the sand. But what is it that's actually going to mean that they can't bury their head in the sand? They have to deal with this. They have to change in order to deal with this. So what is it that makes them absolutely have to see where this path will take them? Because if they could easily bury their head in the sand, then, and sort of pretend nothing is happening, then your reader kind of could too, and they won't be hooked on your story. So you need to make it so that they absolutely have to still go on this journey and change in the way that that journey will change them. So what is it that's going to make that happen? As always, any questions or anything, pop it in the chat. I'm going to read through your writing because I love to. And yeah, let's get going. minute left. Cool. So I can see you're already sharing your responses to the prompt in the chat, which is great. Thank you so much. I know we're nearly on the hour, so if you do have to get going, don't worry, but I'm going to read a couple of them out because I really enjoy reading them. And just quickly before I do, Lou has recommended Lisa Cron's book, The Story Genius, and it really helps with these kind of exercises and setting up your story. I haven't read it myself, but I have heard it recommended. So, I mean, I just love books about writing. They're brilliant, so I'm definitely going to add that to my list. I love thinking through these things. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, Carly, let's have a look. Carly thinks she's the only one not writing fantasy. I've seen a couple that aren't, but there are a lot of fantasy writers. It might be because of from our Fantasy Writers Week. I don't know if any of you guys came to that. So Carly has written, despite the years of unhappiness and the fact that she's left her hometown behind, Jane still feels a connection with some of the people there, especially her childhood friend Abby and Abby's older brother Peter, whom she's had a crush on since high school. Her parents' will contains surprising directives that, if she accepts, will force her to stay in town and attempt a reconciliation with her sister and potentially lead her to question if she should go back to her life in the city or try to rebuild here, in the place where she'd experienced the most unimaginable pain. So yeah, dealing with the kind of the lure of the new against the pain of the old, I think is a very sort of, that sort of thing really drags me in, and how people deal with that, because you can't, as much as you can try, you can't compartmentalize either, and they'll always sort of come back, and things from your past will come back. And it's so great as a reader to read that sort of thing and to see writers drip feeding the information, and I love the craft in that. It's brilliant. Okay, let's have a look at some more. Eddie, so here we go. Demons have appeared and have been running rampant around the small island. The demons can possess people and make them do terrible things, or really anything they want them to do. Genova and Ileana have been confined to their room when Evie was kidnapped by the demons. However, the girls decided they are not just going to sit around twiddling their thumbs while the demons could be hurting Evie. Their room is on the second floor of the building, but it is quite a height up. They'd have to make a makeshift ladder with their sheets to get down without their guardians knowing. They really don't have a plan, they're winging it. But the one thing that they are sure of is rescuing Evie from the demons. This would have been one of those times that the guidance from Lenora would have come in handy, but Genova can't think about her now. She needs to have a clear head. Instead of going home when the demons first appeared, she stayed in the village to help get rid of them and fight. Now Genova and Elena are bringing the fight to them. They must save Evie. There is no way that Genova is going to let the demons take another person that she cares about. She was ready to go home when she found out about Nora. The old lady somehow knew about the events that were to happen, especially to her, and had sent word to her granddaughter that no matter what happens, Genova must continue to fight, defend the village, defeat the demons, and eventually kill Benedict, her father. She just needs to control her powers. She doesn't want to hurt anyone innocent again. Poor Xavier, though out of the hospital, is still recovering from his injuries given by her. To her defense, she was running from demons and was just throwing everything she had out there in the hopes that it hits the demons. She didn't know that her guardian had followed her. Well, she didn't let any of that cloud her mind now. She will do whatever it takes to save Evie. Anyone in the way, regardless of who it is, might get hurt. Hopefully they'll be demons and not her friends again. So much going on there, and sort of so much for Genova to deal with as she faces this very prominent threat that's sort of right here, but she's trying to navigate all of this as she does it and make sure that all of her actions don't affect the people that she loves. And then in a sort of that, then you can see the shift there from that mindset to actually, no, now Evie has been taken, whatever happens to pretty much anyone else I love, I have to save her. So it's that sort of event that makes everything else become smaller, and that has to be put aside to overcome and get to that goal. It's really great. Let's have another look. Let's go back to, let's have a look. Sue's story. So after a prank leaves Ty unable to walk, a girl from his school, someone he and his friends have pranked and bullied relentlessly, comes to visit. She hands him a present, turns and leaves without saying anything to him. The gift is a book about the negative effects of bullying. Deeply touched by what he reads, Ty summons her back for another visit. Together they work on a plan to put a stop to the pranking and bullying that runs rampant at their high school. Oh, cool. So somebody who was sort of the problem has started to become sort of been seen in a different light. I really like that, and how a character can change and how that change can then affect your protagonists. Yeah, cool. Let's keep going. I'm going to read one more. I'm just going to go back to Steph's story about the dragon detective because I love it. So there had been an attempt by Milo to join the dragon enclave. This is where the adult dragons hang out and live, largely doing their own thing and staying away from most of the rest of the world's inhabitants. It's been this way for thousands of years because adult dragons are typically quite large and frightening. They don't really move around well within towns and cities, constantly accidentally knocking holes into things with their tails or stepping on carts and crushing them. However, upon arriving at the enclave, the dragons there refused to accept him as an equal, assuming that size was related to capability and wisdom. I didn't believe that Milo would have anything to add to the group as a benefit, and they didn't want to worry about accidentally stepping on him. He was told politely to return where he grew up, and there'd be a place for him. Sitting outside the enclave's entrance, contemplating life, Milo reflects that his friend Makas has decided to settle down by the sea for the remainder of his days. And I think the end might have got cut off, but I get the gist. Like building up to something that you think is going to make your life go in one way, and then that thing not happening and having to pick up the pieces and either sort of take the path that his friend had taken and go and sort of like settle down somewhere, or I should presume become a dragon detective. But yeah, brilliant. Yeah, he has to decide what to do now. Sort of stuck. Okay, well, thank you so much everyone for sharing. Thank you for coming along today. It's great that so many of you come and stuck to the end and written with us today. So yeah, I'm just going to let everybody wrap up their conversations in the chat, and I'm very quickly just going to share those links. I will just say as well, we have a series of events that are going to come up with a few of our different partners about like everything you need to self-publish, and it's like people that we really trust as experts that we've sort of spoken to personally before. I really appreciate the way they teach and everything. And they're going to guide you through from sort of your idea right through to self-publishing. So you will find something for you in there. That's going to go out in our newsletter tomorrow. So if you're not subscribed to our newsletter, you can subscribe with those links there. I write most of those newsletters and I put my whole heart into them. I really try and put things out there that I think that people will love and find useful. So I'd love it if you subscribe to that. Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us, sharing your ideas. I want to read all of your books, and I mean that. So yeah, best of luck with writing them. Lauren says she loved listening to, or she or he loved listening to my accent. Always a pleasure to ramble on at you. Okay, all right. Have a lovely rest of your day or evening. Cool. See you soon. Bye.